Hello everybody and welcome back to the storage castle, where in between videos I spend few hours trying to polish up the storage system so it actually looks like something, and I've also spent some time organizing the filter so that we're now filtering most of the items you will get in Minecraft on a daily basis. It doesn't filter through every item because for me, for example, there is no reason to really have a chest where I would have beacons or something like that, or stuff like concrete, which I don't use all that much. But all in all, it works really well and I'm very happy with how it turned out. And I kind of ended up going with this dark oak and gold aesthetic, which I don't think I've used before. Now today we're gonna be a bit all over the place because the main time-consuming tasks are finished, right? Those were the outside shell of the castle and the inside, which was the storage. And that's now done. So it is finally time to start doing some detailing and tie it all together. And I started off by actually doing something that I like to do an awful lot on my build, and that's to create fake rooms behind windows. The purpose of these isn't to be functional rooms or even make sense in a lot of cases. It's just to have something in there that usually adds a lot of color, which is why I use a lot of bookshelves, so you can catch a glimpse of something as you're passing by. It kind of gives the build some warmth, some structure, some depth, a little bit of color, right? So it's not just cold stone walls all the way through. Now from there, I decided to shoot myself in the foot and create a spiral staircase that would lead to my throne room. The reason I consider this shooting myself in the foot, even though I think the staircase turned out great, is because I sort of built it with the outside wall in mind, the wall you can see behind it, and not what's on the other side, on the inside of the castle, which is the storage. It is not aligned to the storage, and it made decorating this bottom section, which is something we will do in a little bit, much harder. I'm also not sure if I did the spiral correctly. I think it's supposed to go clockwise if there is a pillar in the middle, and this all has to do with like the defender-attacker dynamic, because most people are right-handed. So as a defender, if you're retreating up the staircase, you want it to spin clockwise so that you can maneuver your dominant arm around the pillars, whereas the attackers, which are ascending the staircase, will have the pillar in the way of their dominant arm. I think that's how it's supposed to be, and then it's kind of the other way around if you don't have a pillar in the middle, where the staircase should spin counterclockwise so that you as a defender retreating up have much more space to maneuver in the center of the staircase, whereas the attackers that are ascending the staircase have a wall on their right. But anyway, I wanted the staircase to be somewhat ornate because, well, it's leading up to the throne room, and I think it turned out great. I'm still not sure what I'm gonna do with the room on the top, because this is not going to be the actual like throne room. This is just the room where the spiral staircase ends, and then we have a door that goes into what in a little bit is going to be the throne room that's sitting right on top of the storage. Now I had to be pretty careful when designing the inside of the throne room because the walls here are only 1 block thick, so I had to design the inside of the throne room with the outside wall in mind, because the throne room is quite prominent. It's sitting quite high as far as the castle is concerned. The throne room is also much narrower than I would like it to be, and if I were to make it again, I would probably make it a few blocks wider, probably 2 blocks on either side. But that didn't stop me from slapping down my gold block and black wool throne, and I also thought it would be kind of cool to have a black and red carpet leading up to it. But then I thought, you know what, this isn't like nowhere near enough bling for a throne room, so I added some golden trim into the floor before putting in the black and red carpet in between the trims and hiding some glowstone underneath it as well for lighting. But even that felt like it wasn't enough bling, so I added some beacons and even more diamonds to the throne. This is one of the benefits of having a giant wither fortress with a really cool wither farm in the middle of it. I can just pick up a beacon whenever I feel like it. Then it was time to change the shape of the room a little bit and do some arches that would basically go throughout the entire thing, changing the shape of the room without augmenting the walls. And this was one of the very few things that I was actually comfortable with doing, because it's something I've done before, so I just freehanded it and I think it turned out great. Then it was time to decorate the walls, and I really wasn't sure what I was gonna do. I was thinking maybe paintings, maybe some ornaments, but in the end I went with something that I don't use at all pretty much, and that is armor stands, and I used almost all my iron that I brought over from the iron farm to make sets of armor for every single one of them. This was a very easy way to add a ton of intricate detail that you don't see all that often in Minecraft. And just to top it all off, I wanted to add an ornament to the other side, so I went with gold, and eventually I slapped in a diamond in the center of it as well to sort of mirror the throne. And to top it all off, I added a bed to the throne because, you know, if I'm gonna sleep somewhere, I might as well sleep here. So now that the inside of the throne room was done, it was time to do the outside. Now for this one, I already had something in mind when I was building it. I just didn't want to faff around with the intricate details because I wanted to get the outer shell done so I can start working on the storage. So I started off by building 4 spires, 1 in each corner, and these were very small. They were 3 by 3 and the corner pieces were made out of wool, so they appeared even thinner. Then I carved out some windows, and these were spaced so that they would go in between the beams that are arcing over the throne room. And I wanted to add a ton of detail to this because this is kind of like the centerpiece of the castle, right? It's quite tall, you can see it from pretty much every side, it's big, so I wanted it to look fancy. So I used a bunch of grindstones with some walls, stairs, fences, and trapdoors to decorate it as much as I could, basically. And I absolutely love the way it turned out. There is a ton of depth with the different shapes, but also a ton of color from the fences and trapdoors, and even the grindstones. So I did this on both sides, and then I decorated the front and the back a little bit as well, because from the inside of the castle, I imagined there being 2 windows behind the throne. So I added some ornaments and a similar style window to what we have on the side as well. You also may have noticed that I'm using 2 different types of fences. I'm using spruce at the top and then dark oak at the bottom to create some artificial shadow. And you can kind of see me flying back and forth here as I'm replicating the same thing on the other side. Then it was time to create another fake room. This is right in front of the throne room. The back wall here is actually the throne room wall, and I really had no idea what I was gonna do here. I just wanted to once again have something in here so that you can catch a glimpse of it through the windows as you're passing by. So I started off with kind of the same style that we did in the first fake room, which is dark oak for the floor to create some nice warm contrast to the cold stone walls, and then I used spruce fences and trapdoors and like stairs to create some fake chairs and fake tables before once again adding a bunch of bookshelves to the back for the color. I also finally used something that I really need to use more of, and that is paintings. Paintings can add a lot of character and a lot of color to a room as well, so I added 2 on the wall that we're currently up against right now. And to top it all off, I added some lanterns so that the room is actually spawn proof and it's not constantly spawning zombies and skeletons and all that kind of stuff. And lanterns are great for decorating as well because they add a ton of color while also providing light. I love them. Now I also wanted to decorate the outside of this room, but I really couldn't come up with anything that would look good, so I instead moved on to the neighboring wall, which, I mean, it has some detail, but all in all is pretty flat and I think it could use some decoration. I was really not happy with these flat walls going all the way up, so I shaved off the sides and I replaced the full blocks with stairs and walls instead, so that the whole structure retains its thickness. It doesn't really change the shape of the structure, but it just adds more detail to it. So I did that on all 3 of these, and I think it added some much needed detail to this side of the castle. And then I started decorating the inside here, and this is where I realized that I shot myself in the foot by building the spiral staircase where I did, because as you can clearly tell, it is not aligned to anything. And on top of that, we also have far more space on the right than we have on the left, so we can have a nice corridor that would be centered on the door at least. Plus, the second door, which is currently behind us, the one that leads onto the bridge, is only 3 blocks wide and it will need a diagonal corridor leading up to it, whereas this one is 4 blocks wide and it has a straight corridor leading up to it. This is something I didn't anticipate to be as big of a problem as it was. I didn't think about it, I was just like, yeah, it's the inside of the castle, I'm just gonna put up walls and we're done. But my god, this took me hours and hours and it's still not done because I just kept running into more and more problems, like with the ceiling, for example. In some places I could happily raise the ceiling up by like 5 or 10 blocks, but in other places I would pillar up, dig 1 block and poof, there was the sky, and I was like, oh no. So yeah, this was a lot of fiddle farting, a lot of back and forth, and yeah, it's still not done, but it's at least going somewhere. So if I keep playing with it, I keep trying different things, eventually I will figure out something that looks great. So to sort of take a break from the interior decorating, I thought it was time to finally create the main pathway that would lead to what I consider to be the front of the castle, even though it's kind of at the back. And yes, I know this might feel a little bit weird because, it would kind of make more sense for the bridge to be the main entrance, but the bridge was sort of just a happy accident. It's something that happened because I was like, what would be cool? Having a bridge. So I always intended to have this winding pathway go like sort of around the castle and down to where the nether portal is. Now, one thing I really didn't want to do was to force the pathway through certain areas. When you get to a point and you're just like, I guess I'm just gonna make stairs and kind of carve through the mountain. That's one thing I didn't want to do. I wanted it to be a winding path that slowly snakes its way down. So I had to do a bit of terraforming to create a nice and gentle slope down. But I think it was worth it because it ended up looking great. And then I also added some stone on the outside here because the stone kind of shows throughout the entire mountain. So I wanted to replicate that a little bit. And I also sprinkled a lot of oak leaves all around the path and on the cliff as well to sort of create some bushes. And I added some berry bushes as well, which are smaller than leaves. So they add some, additional greenery, but also a little bit of color because the berries are red. Now, the materials I ended up using for the path are what I consider to be sort of standard for this kind of well-trodden path that's been used a lot. So we have sort of this cobbling of cobblestone, funnily enough, andesite, stone, coarse dirt, path blocks, and grass blocks. And it's mostly connected via slabs, though there is the occasional stair here and there as well. So here's kind of what the final path looks like. I love the way it snakes around the castle, and I, finished it off by adding some extra leaves and berry bushes to define it a little bit more. Next step in our path decoration was to add some trees alongside the path. Now at this point I was happy to add more trees because I kind of have a vision of what this area is going to look like, so I can happily put down trees and know that they're not going to be in the way of any future expansion of the castle. And I mean, even if they are in the way, I can just chop them down and build them somewhere else. It's not a big deal. This is also the first time I think where you will see me gathering materials on camera because I completely ran out of spruce leaves, so I had to grow some extra because I didn't want to destroy the forest that's surrounding the area and shave them off with some shears. In the end, I ended up doing 5 spruce trees and I think they turned out great, and I think it's mainly because I just didn't spend a lot of time on them. I simply plopped them down, I put on the leaves and I left them because I find that the more time I spend on a tree, going back, removing some leaves, adding leaves, removing leaves, adding leaves, the worse the tree ends up looking in the end. And then it was time for sort of this cherry on top, or rather multiple cherries alongside the path. We needed some lamps to illuminate the path. Now the design I went with is similar to something I found on Google. I just modified it a little bit and it's pretty iron heavy because every lamp has 2 lanterns, an anvil and 2 hoppers, but I think they look fantastic. Now these are here to of course illuminate the path, but to also provide some additional detail and to also melt some of the snow off the path. And with the lamps done, I by the way made 4 of them going down the path, I felt we've done enough to finally do a proper walkthrough of the area.